But as I'm doing this, I could not think about the 280 miles left. I couldn't even think about, I want to just get 100 miles done. It was too overwhelming for me. I have 3 days left, roughly 280 miles left. I'm now coming out of the Appalachians. There's not so many hills or mountains to climb. It's becoming an easier ride as I get closer to the coast. But knowing that I had this short amount of time left, there was the excitement of it. There was also my body was just breaking down. Emotionally, I was exhausted. This is in early July, so the temperature is 100 degrees every day. So my start would be 4 o'clock in the morning to just take advantage of the cooler temperatures. But just so you have a perspective, it takes roughly 3.5 hours in a car to go a couple hundred miles. On a bicycle, that's going to take, when you're pulling a bicycle trailer, when you're pulling 60 pounds of gear, it's going to take roughly 15, 18 hours to go a couple hundred miles, maybe even 20 hours. It's a long time sitting on a bicycle seat, pedaling one stroke after another. But as I'm doing this, I could not think about the 280 miles left. I couldn't even think about, I want to just get 100 miles done. It was too overwhelming for me. I had to break it down into small bite-sized pieces. And the coach that I had hired, Michelle Granger, she had encouraged me. She goes, Michael, on that last stretch, before the final day, I want you to take it all in. I want you to go down memory lane and reflect on the whole journey. And at first I thought that was a little weird. I would have thought you would have done that on the final day. But she said, Michael, you want the final day to be about the arrival and the emotions of what that brings, and take the day prior or the 2 days prior and reflect on the whole trip. And so I started doing that. But as I was doing that, I had to break this down into little bitty sections. And so in North Carolina, it was very convenient to roughly every 10 miles or so, there was always a little town or a gas station or a restaurant or somewhere that I could refuel with Gatorade or water or something to eat. And so I started taking it into bite-sized pieces and just look at the small chunk of, let me go 10 miles and I'll reevaluate. And as I would go 10 miles, I would think about what I've just gone through the last 41 days of this trip. And I would think about in California, as I was going through areas of the vineyards, the grapes, and the beauty of California, and going into Nevada, where I had just finished a full day of riding. I'm coming into this town. I'm so ready for something amazing to eat. And I go up to a deli and they're closed. And the next town was like 25 miles away. And how this guy that would happen to be on his cell phone talking on the sidewalk. I went up to him. I asked if there was any place that he knew of where I could get some food and water. And he was a volunteer firefighter. And he said, come over to the firehouse. I think we have some food in the refrigerator. And so I followed him over to the firehouse. And as I'm following him, I see a bear. Scares me a little bit, puts a little fear in me. But I go to the firehouse, and he makes this big plate of food with a Coke. And I just gorge on this food. It was so amazing. And that night, as I go to sleep, all I could think about was that bear. And so I had some pots next to me from my cooking utensils, and I'd clang them together right before I went to sleep, hoping that would deter any bear. And so I would think about stories like that. I would get emotional at times of the journey, the things that my dad and I went through. And then I would go back to this 10 miles, and I'd come to a gas station, or I'd come to a little town, and I'd go into the store. I'd get some food. I'd fill my water bottles up with Gatorade or water. And then I would take a little break. And then I would start the next 10 miles. And as I started that next 10 miles, I would reflect back, and I'd cry. It was emotional. I was an emotional wreck. But I would go back to other times where at one point I had a mechanical on, my chain had broke, and I needed to find a bicycle shop to help me get this thing repaired. And so I'm literally walking my bike on the road, walking my way into town, and this truck passes me and then backs up and comes to where I was at. And there's three girls, and these girls asked me if I needed a ride. I'm like, yeah, it'd be great if you could take me to the bike shop. It's not too far away, and get my bike repaired. So I hop in the truck with them, and they were country girls. They were girls that were familiar with cattle and the open range out there. And as we're driving, we come across a herd of cows. And one of the girls was like, I'm going to get out and slap the cow. And so I was like, you do things like that? Like, why would you do that? That seems, I'm not familiar with that life of chasing cows around. But I was entertained. And they were like, Michael, you do it. Now, remember, guys, I am in spandex shorts, a spandex shirt. I'm in that bicycling outfit. And also my shoes are not tennis shoes. They're cycling shoes. They have metal clips on the bottom of them to clip into my pedals. So they're not made to run. However, I was having a good time. I go chasing after a cow. I did not catch up, but I was trying to slap that cow just to see. They said nothing would happen, so I trusted them. But I just kept reflecting on the good times, the hard times, and the times of where little by little the redemption and the restoration of my dad just kept unfolding. 10 miles after 10 miles, I reflected on the crash when I hit that embankment. I was run off the road by a car, and I hit that embankment. It knocks me out. I fall down this ravine. I'm laying in a creek, 2 boulders on each side of my head, and firefighters coming down to rescue me. But then I would go back to the 10 miles, and I'd go into a town and I'd stop at a deli and I'd get me a sandwich and I'd get a Coke. I'd take a little break. My dad would call me, "How are you doing?" And at this point, I stopped looking at how many miles I was going. I just was focused on, let me get to the next town and take a little break and reevaluate, and then go to the next town, take a little break and reevaluate. And so as I kept going and kept going, it was getting dark. It was coming towards the end of the day. And my dad calls me for one of the last couple of times that he called me on the trip. And he goes, "Michael, do you know how many miles you've gone?" I said, "Dad, I'm not even paying attention to it. All I can do is go 10 miles at a time, because if I think beyond or more than that, it'd be too overwhelming." And he goes, "Michael, you've gone 180 miles. And so you guys know, that was the longest I had gone, the whole 40-something days. And he says, "Michael, just take a break. It's okay." And so that day of starting out at 4 o'clock in the morning, starting early before the sun rose and taking advantage of the cooler hours. Now at this point, it's 7, 8 o'clock at night. It's cooling down. The sun's starting to set. But all I could do was go, just focus on 10 miles. And knowing that I had just completed 180, I told my dad, "I'm just going to go 10 more miles. He's like, "Michael, you've done a lot. You've done the most you've ever done. You've got 100 miles left. You can do that tomorrow." And he was encouraging me to stop. And so I just kept pedaling. And I went another 10 miles. At 190 miles. And I stop at a gas station. I fill up again, fill my water bottles up. I was going through 3 water bottles every 10 miles. I'd get some extra food and I'd eat, take a little break again, get back on the road. And my dad was still encouraging me, "Michael, just stop. Just take a break." I'm 7 miles into this last 10 miles that I did. My legs are starting to shake uncontrollably. And I'm not talking about like little tremors or low blood sugar shake. It was like I was almost losing control of the bicycle. And so I had no choice. My body was telling me to stop. Not only was my support, my dad, who became my biggest fan, he was my support. He was my go-to. But my support system was saying, "Michael, just stop. Just pause." You know, and part of me was like, if I stop, what would that mean for tomorrow? But just because you're at a place in life that your support system, that your body, that your intuition is telling you, take a little break, that doesn't mean you're quitting. That doesn't mean that you don't pick back up tomorrow. That means you just take a pause for right now. And so that's what I did. 200 miles in, I just took a little pause. I set up my tent. I prepared for the last day. And as I have been sitting here thinking about this podcast and this episode and taking the break and my support system, something happened to me last night. Last night, knowing that I had this big day of recording, I was excited about the recording. I'd already had everything planned out of what I was going to talk to you guys about. Last night, yesterday, I still had about 3 Zoom calls to finish up my day. It was 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I was running late, and I drove home, came into my office, started a Zoom call right at 4 o'clock. But in the distraction of everything, as I'm coming home, I've got my AirPods in my ear. I'm talking to my girlfriend on the phone as I'm driving. I pull in the garage. I shut the garage door. And in the distraction, I forget to turn off the car. I don't know how I did it. I thought I did, but I didn't. And I go in, I say hi to her. I go straight up to my office. I jump on the Zoom call. And I had a 4 o'clock Zoom call, a 5 o'clock, a 6 o'clock. And I'm rolling. I'm going after Zoom call after Zoom call. I finish the Zoom call. I eat dinner. I go take a shower, and I'm in bed by 9 o'clock. I don't think about anything. And unlike every night and most nights, my girlfriend, my partner, she always comes to bed with me. We always go to sleep together. But for some reason, last night, she was laying in bed with me, and she decided to go out into the common area, into the living room area, and respond back to emails and texts and do a little scrolling on TikTok or Instagram. But she was out there doing her thing. And at first I thought it was strange because I wasn't like her, but I was tired. I was exhausted, and I wanted to be ready and prepped for today. And so about 2 hours later, she comes into the bedroom. It's about 11 o'clock. And she's like, "Michael, there's a smell." And I'm like, "What?" And at first I was like, it's nothing. I was even a little frustrated getting out of bed. I knew I had a big day today, and I wanted to get some good sleep. So I walk out, and I could smell a hint of something. I didn't really register of what it was. It smelled like gas, but it didn't smell like gas. And I walk around the house, and I'm checking everywhere. And as I go downstairs and I'm checking, the smell is getting stronger. And I walk outside into the garage. I open up the door, and I was hit with this enormous smell, this of just exhaust. It was stifling. And I go and I turn off the vehicle, and I'm processing what's just happened. I open up all the doors and windows, and I get out. And we ended up going to a hotel and letting the house air out. But as I've reflected on this, it was just showing me that, Michael, going fast is great. Going hard is great. Pushing is great. Doing the extraordinary is great. But also what's great is listening to your body. Also what's great is listening to your support team. Also what's great is hearing those little messages going, slow down. It's okay. If you keep going the pace you're going, you could make a mistake. It could cost you someone's life. And as I was reflecting over the thought that I could have walked out of my bedroom to see my girlfriend just lying there dead. And so as I reflect back to the trip and my dad saying, "Michael, just take a little break," I'm encouraged that that's okay. It's okay when you're in the big scheme of the goal and you're going full force and you're pushing. It's okay to take a break. That doesn't mean you're quitting. That doesn't mean you've given up on your goal. That doesn't mean that it won't happen. What it means is you're recognizing the importance of your support team, You're recognizing the importance of what your body is saying, and you can pick back up tomorrow. You can pick back up in a week. And so I did. I got some good rest that night. As I said, my tent was all done. I'm getting my final night's sleep in this tent. I write in my journal, talk about what happened that day, and now the final day. The excitement of getting to see my kids that I haven't seen in 42 days. See my family and all of my friends that were going to be at the beach. I was ready. I was so excited. And so tomorrow was the day. I finished the night's sleep. I'm ready. I get up and I just keep pedaling. Stay tuned for the next episode.